Hey everyone, Rob from Southgate Media Group here. Before we get started with this podcast, we have a quick message. If this is your first time checking out the show, we love that you found us and we really hope you enjoy it. What we have to say is for the subscribers, if you enjoy our shows, would you please donate to help keep these going? We don't want to have to put traditional ads on these shows, but this does cost money, so we really do rely heavily on donations. To make a donation to the show, please go to our website, www.southgatemediagroup.com. Go to the page for the show, and in the upper right-hand corner is a donate button. It takes you right to PayPal, and you can donate whatever amount you want. Thanks a lot for listening, everybody. And now, on with the show.
My name is David Bishop, and you're listening to Primatech Files.
Hey, Primatech peeps. Welcome back to the Primatech Files, a Southgate Media Group podcast dedicated to all things Heroes Prime and Heroes Reborn related things. I am Lilith, and on the hunt for Evos with me is...
It's me, Ricky. Yo.
And today we have a very special guest. Would you like to introduce yourself, sir?
Of course. My name is David Bishop. I'm a writer, and I'm the author of Brave New World, which is an ebook novelization of the very first episode of Heroes Reborn. And the ebook was published last Friday in the US, the day after the first episode of Heroes Reborn was broadcast in the US.
Yay.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that intro. I just have a quick question. Originally, it wasn't billed as a novelization, but obviously you wrote it. Like, how do novelizations of, like, episodes in movies work?
I've had 20 novels published previously, and all of those have been based on pre-existing characters or universes or properties, whatever you want to call them. So I've written for things like A Nightmare on Elm Street, and I've written novels based on Doctor Who, and novels based on Judge Dredd and other properties, Warhammer, things like that. And in all of those cases, it was like an original story set in the universe of this character or these characters. For this one, for Brave New World, it's slightly different in that it's a novelization. So what happens with a novelization is the writer is supplied a draft or multiple drafts of the script, and then the job of the writer is to take that script, which is designed for TV and for film, television production, and to turn that into prose fiction. So you have to take the best of the TV version and try and use the strengths of prose fiction to bring that story to life.
Awesome. Let's rewind back now. So, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself and how and why you got into writing?
Cool. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, as you may just about be able to figure out from my accent, I live in Scotland, but I'm from New Zealand originally. So I'm well travelled. If I get any further away, I'm on my way back, basically. So I was a daily newspaper reporter in New Zealand, and I emigrated to the UK in 1990, so 25 years ago now, so a long time ago. But I was looking for work, and I was looking for different kind of work. And I ended up becoming a comics editor. So I worked on some British comics, Judge Dredd and 2000 AD Weekly. So I was editor on both of those titles through the 90s. And then I had started writing novels at that point. I wrote some Judge Dredd novels that were published by Virgin Books. And then I wrote a Doctor Who novel called Who Killed Kennedy. Mm-hmm. And then I quit to go freelance in the year 2000, moved up to Scotland. And I've been freelance writing ever since. So I've had 20 novels published. I've written comics and graphic novels. I've written audio dramas and radio plays for the BBC. I've written episodes of TV dramas for the BBC over here. I've also written for computer games, non-fiction books, you name it, I've probably written it by this point in my life.
Well, you've mentioned a lot of the different kind of mediums that you've written in. I was just wondering, which is your favourite to write in?
Oh gosh, that's a tricky one. I'm honestly not sure. I mean, they've all got different strengths. the joy of prose fiction is the fact that you can go into the heads of the characters and you can find out what they're thinking and feeling. And so that's one of the joys of writing this novelization, was the ability to go into the heads of the characters and sort of reveal more about them than you can necessarily tell just by watching the episode. So that's prose fiction. I really like it for that quality and the other things that you can achieve in prose. I love writing for comics because there you get to, as a writer, you get to collaborate with an artist, and you will achieve things with a good artist. They will make you look better as a writer, which is always good. Anything that makes me look good, that's a winner. And the combined creativity of two people can often give you a better result than one person working alone. So I love writing for comics. I don't get to do enough of that. And I really enjoy screenwriting. I've been doing a lot of that over the last 10 years. So writing for TV and also writing scripts for radio drama as well has been fun. So I don't have a favorite. Probably, I don't know, although I've done a bit of work for computer games, it's probably the area where I'm least comfortable. So if that answers your question.
Oh, that's fair enough. Keeping on the whole writing theme, what is your kind of favourite genre to write in?
Oh gosh, I mean, the weird thing is I've ended up writing a lot of science fiction in my career thus far, and it wasn't actually my plan. I mean, I did read science fiction growing up, and basically, I think, blame Doctor Who. I saw Doctor Who when I was very young and at an impressionable age in New Zealand, and that was it. I was a sucker for science fiction after that, and the idea of being able to travel through time and have adventures, and you could just step into this blue box and away we go, and it would be amazing. And I just went, okay, that. So that's always appealed to me. But because I was working in comics and working on Judge Dredd in 2008, which are both science fiction titles and characters, it sort of that led to more work in science fiction. So I've ended up doing a lot of science fiction, not really by design, more by accident. But I think my other great love is mystery, crime and mysteries. And I think the giveaway to tell what kind of writer you are actually is to see what it is that you read for pleasure. You know, not for school or college or university, and not because somebody's making it, but just the books that you pick up to read because you're looking for something to read on holiday or on a plane or on a train or a bus or whatever. So that's always a good clue, I think, of what it is that you pick up out of your own choice. Tells you a lot about yourself as a writer. So I think crime, I would like to do more crime, actually.
Oh, okay.
Thrillers, that kind of thing.
What was the last book that you actually picked up to read? For pleasure?
Well, I was on a plane on Monday, actually, so I bought 2 books at the airport. I bought a terrible thriller. Just a terrible... it starts in an airport, which is the opposite. It's an airport trashy book. I'm not going to name names because having slagged it off, I think if you're going to criticize something, you should either have the courage to say what it is, or else you should have the respect of another professional writer not to slag them off by name. So I'm not going to name names.
That's fine.
It wasn't for me. And what was the other book I bought with it? I picked up 2 at the same time, and it's gone out of my head. The last book I read that I loved is a book called The Chimes by a New Zealand writer called Anna Smale, and it's a dystopian near future, and there's a love story. There's a gay love story in it, and it's about a world where there's a system where there's an oppressive government that is destroying people's memories. And it uses music to do it. It broadcasts music twice a day at the start of that, and it destroys any short-term memories you have. So that was the last book I read that I loved.
Oh, cool.
Wow. Oh, you said that you wrote for comic books, so does that mean you like comic books?
Oh, yeah.
As a kid and as an adult now, too?
Yes. Oh, yeah, completely. I grew up reading comics in New Zealand. I mean, it wasn't easy to get hold of comics in New Zealand because we're kind of in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. So the comics that we would get the Christmas issue would turn up in sort of April of any comic. So I'm kind of used to reading Christmas issues around Easter. So it always seems strange to me when I watch a Christmas episode of anything on TV and it's actually Christmas. But then I'm from New Zealand, where Christmas it's sunshine and you go to
Exactly,
the beach
yeah.
on Christmas Day. So I've got a messed up idea of what Christmas is anyway. So I grew up reading comics. I particularly like Marvel comics because this sounds so shallow. They were in color. The DC comics that we could buy in New Zealand were actually Australian reprints, and they were only in black and white. I don't know why. It was cheaper to print them. So I read a lot of Marvel comics. I read sort of Daredevils and Captain America. And a bit of the Avengers. But I really hooked into Daredevil when Frank Miller started on it in the late 70s. And then I was also reading British comics. And then when I moved over to Britain, I ended up sort of falling into working in comics by mistake. But yeah, I still read them, still love them.
Very cool.
So let's move on to Heroes. So the first thing I want to find out is how did this Brave New World come about? Did they seek you out to start writing the book, or did you was there like an interview kind of process? I don't know what to call it, but yeah.
Did your agent slap it to you or what?
Well, what it was is the guy who's the editor of the series is a guy called Alan Guthrie of the novellas.
Yeah.
And I knew him. I teach part-time on a creative writing MA at Edinburgh Napier University in Scotland. And we focus really heavily on genre fiction. So our students write science fiction, they write fantasy, they write crime, and they write horror. They also write comic books, actually, on our MA. And Alan came in, and he was a guest speaker on the course because he's an editor. He's also a prize award-winning crime writer himself. He's also an agent. So he's a man with his fingers in a lot of pies. So he came in to talk to our students, I guess, the start of this year. And he said to me, he knew a bit about my background, and he said, would I be interested in doing a TV tie-in? But he couldn't tell me what it was to. Because it was all very hush-hush and top secret, and he'd signed a non-disclosure agreement, and he was not allowed to say what the show was. And so it was like, would you be interested in something that I can't tell you? And I was like, maybe. I mean, it's going to depend on what it actually is. And, there's money involved. It would be helpful if you could sort of vaguely indicate there might be numbers of money or something. Because you sort of think, well, you don't know. I wasn't clear. The only thing that was clear at the start was it was going to be 25 to 30,000 words long. So novella length. So I was okay, that was fine because that wasn't going to be a huge commitment of time for me. I knew I could do that in about a month, really, depending upon what was involved in the job. So I was sort of like, well, I could be interested. So they had to send me not one, but two non-disclosure agreements. One came from the publishers who were called Basti, and another one came over from NBC in America, and the NBC one was terrifying.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't say, we will send hitmen round to wipe out your family and erase you from time and existence. But that was sort of the feeling that was coming across. That was the vibe of the thing. So I had to sign both of these. I still didn't know what it was about yet, but I had to sign this thing just so they could tell me the name of the show I might possibly be trying out for, which just seemed bizarre. So I signed those. I was like, well, it's not going to cost me anything to sign this. And then they told me, and I was like, oh, great. Okay, because I knew Heroes was coming back, and I'd watched the show when it was on, 2006 and onwards. So I watched the show, and I enjoyed the show when it had been on the first time, and I was like, okay, well, this could be cool. And then we started talking about sort of money in terms and when the delivery deadlines might be. Mm-hmm. And then it was going to be 6 standalone novellas that were going to be original stories featuring characters, either classic Heroes characters or the new characters from Reborn. And that's what the other 5 books in the series are. They're all standard. They're all stories, original stories about the characters. So I think Keith DeCandio's done What Happens to Claire Bennett. Yeah. And other people are doing some of the new characters. So that was what everybody else got to do. But because mine was coming out first, and because the approval process was going to take time, they said, would I be interested in novelizing the first episode? And I was like, actually, yes, because I grew up reading novelizations of like Doctor Who TV stories. Because a lot of the Doctor Who stuff, the first time I actually heard about the story was reading the novelisation. The novelisation got to New Zealand like 10 years before some of the stories. So in fact, in my head, some of the stories from Doctor Who, the old classic Doctor Who, should look amazing because all I had is the novelisation of my imagination. And then when I watched them, I went, "Oy, this is nowhere near as good as the budget I had." But anyway, so I grew up reading those, and also like Alan Dean Foster writing Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back and the Aliens novelisation. I love those books growing up as a kid because it really brought the stuff to life for me. So the chance to do a real proper old school novelisation I was like, yeah, I'm in, count me in. So having said I was up for it, then they sent me, I think, a first draft or an early draft of the script for the opening episode. And then I started regularly getting scripts of later episodes, so I knew what was going to happen, get a sense of where the story was going. Not that I could talk about what was going to happen later on, I still can't. The omerta, is still in place.
Yeah.
So I had a sense of where the story was going, so I'd have a context for why characters were acting the way they were. And then also I then started getting new versions of the script for the first episode as they were reworking it as they were going along. And I said, well, what would be great is if I could include a lot of the material that's getting lost along the way, deleted scenes. There's whole scenes and sequences which were in various versions, incarnations of the scripts that Tim and I guess his writing team wrote that didn't make it into the final version on TV. And I said, could we have these deleted scenes, these like Easter eggs for the real fans? Because if we just do a straight novelisation on what's on TV, I mean, that's fine. But it would be even better if we could have all this cool extra stuff that you don't get to see on TV, because then it gives people a reason to pick up the novella.
I liked how you put like the extra stuff at the beginning of the chapters.
Oh yeah,
like, the one I love most is the speed trap one because it comes into play with the Collinses. So
yes.
It was cute.
Yeah. That whole scene with there's a scene for those who haven't read it. There's a scene in the novella which isn't in the TV show, and it takes place at night. And Luke and Joanne are driving from Chicago to Carbondale because it's after the what happens at the Evo's Anonymous meeting, without spoiling it for people. And they're going to go and find young Tommy, who got out of the meeting before things happened. It's sufficiently vague but enticing. Anyway, they're driving at night at speed along, I think it's the I-59 from memory. I had to look all these roads up on maps of America. Google Maps, it's brilliant. And free plug for them there. And so there's the sequence of, and something terrible happens. That's all we can
I enjoyed that extra scene tremendously.
And there's the character that they meet where the terrible thing happens. His name is it's one of my old school friends, Vincent Mortimer. And he's been in about 12 of my books. And terrible things keep happening to Vincent.
I was going to say, was that like your principal? Were you a bad child? So he keeps ending up like that.
He keeps turning up he's been in books I've written. He's been in I think he's been in audio dramas I wrote. He's been in comics I've written, and every time something terrible happens to poor Vincent Mortimer. He's still on the real Vincent Mortimer is still on speaking terms with me, but every now and then I just do something terrible to him in print.
That's what you get for being a friend with a writer. I have a few. I know how it goes.
There you go. So that's what happens. So it was and I was thinking, because the other thing is, because what you can do on screen and what you can do in print are two different things. So obviously, one of the great tropes of Heroes, I guess, is the Mahinda voiceover. That Mahinda voiceover, we've had that since the very first episode back in 2006, where he's talking about, what is this thing called life, etc., and all that stuff. And there's that in the first episode of Heroes Reborn. And I was thinking, okay, well, I can't really have a voiceover in a book, because how's that going to work? I mean, you could, but it would seem a bit weird. And also, you have the voiceover overlaid on scenes where Mahinda's not on screen. I can't remember. I don't think he's on screen in the whole of the first episode. He's in the prequel, maybe. We see a photo of him, that's right. And we see him on a TV screen. But that's it. So we don't see him, and it would be weird having a voiceover. So I was thinking, okay, well, how can I take this good material and find a way to use it in the book? And then I thought, okay, well, we'll have it in the manuscript of whatever the one that
Escalating Evolution. Yeah.
Thank you. There you go. That Quentin's waving around and shoving an HRG's face in the street at night when it's raining, going, "I've got the manuscript, man," and all of that. So I thought, well, perfect. Then that's a good fit for that. So once I put that, I think at the end and then at the start, then I thought, well, then it would be nice if each chapter has just a little opener, a little thing that's like a little teaser, taster of what's going to happen in the chapter.
So, speaking of the writing process, what kind of research did you have to do? Was it just going through the scripts that they had sent you, or did you go back and watch Heroes just to kind of get a feel for it? And then what was the turnaround process like?
Before I'd even got any of the scripts, I got the original series on Blu-ray because I'd watched it when it was on.
Yeah.
But I suspect like one or two people around the world, I sort of started to drift away after the writer's strike. I think, yeah. I mean, I love the first season. I thought the first season was amazing. It was truly groundbreaking stuff and what they did with it. And it sort of proved that you could do a comic book sort of geek sensibility, but do it well and take it seriously and give it some gravitas and all of that. So all the things they did well in the first season. And there was some great stuff in the second season, but it slightly kind of got lost in the shuffle, and then so I drifted away. Anyway, so I sat down and so I watched selected highlights from my favorite episodes from the first season. So I watched the pilot, and then I watched the finale, and I watched Company Man and a couple of the other great ones. And then I dipped through the remaining 3 seasons and just did a catch up to find out what had actually happened, because I'm pretty sure I didn't watch much of the final season when it was on. I'm pretty sure I missed most of that. So I watched selected highlights just to get myself where the characters had been left, how the show had ended with Claire on the, off the Ferris wheel in Central Park and doing the announcement and all of that. So I was up to speed with that. So right, okay, so that's where they were. And then I got the scripts and was like, okay, poring over the scripts. And then I was getting these different versions of the same script going, oh, okay, so we're not doing this now, right? And there was one scene which isn't in the novella and which isn't on screen. There was a scene where it's probably a bit cheeky of me to mention it, but hey ho, there you go, exclusive for you guys. There was a scene with the Tommy character, and I think it's Brad, who's like the jock character. And there was a bit where Brad catches Tommy sort of looking at the girl, Emily, I think her name is, and originally it was he gets chased into the toilets and he gets a swirly down the toilet bowl and they flush. And they didn't do that. That got cut pretty early. And I can understand why, because A, you've got to try and how do you film a swirly and make it look good? And really, if I'm an actor, do I want my head stuck down a toilet? Even a prop toilet? It's like, you're going to have to get a stuntman in to do it. And it kind of, the problem was, A, it made Tommy seem like too weak a character, and he's not. He's a very strong character. So the fact he doesn't use his power is one of the things that shows his strength. And also it kind of made the character of Brad such an asshole that it's kind of hard to dial it back from that you despise the character. If that scene had been on screen, you would despise the character of Brad forever and ever, amen. And, there is more nuance to be had out of Brad. There's more going on with Brad than you've necessarily seen in the first step. I can't remember whether there's sequences in either 2, 3, or maybe 4 where you learn a little bit more about why Brad is the way Brad is. Yeah. And so I think if we'd had the toilet swirly, the McFlurry of Tommy, then that wouldn't quite have worked as well. So yeah. So that was sort of my research. Basically, it was the script and then the different versions of the script. And then going into each scene and then trying to figure out, I had to get approval for the stuff that was the cut scenes. They all had to be signed off by Tim and his team. And James Middleton is one of the execs on the show. He was the point man for a lot of these discussions and approvals. And he was really helpful, actually. And then it was a case of, there was a weird thing. They asked for all the writers, for all the novellas, you had to write a synopsis for the story you were going to tell. And my editor, Alan, was like, well, you already know the story David's going to tell because it's your script. But they said, humour us, please. So I ended up having to write a synopsis of the first episode based on the script they'd sent me for them to read and go, oh, yes, that I remember now. Which seemed a little bizarre, but it was the system they were using. So that had to get signed off. And I ended up with, I think I had 4 weeks to write the first draft. And actually, I was busy for the first 2 weeks on the project, so I ended up with 2 weeks to write the first draft. But that was fine. That was fine. I could write quite fast when required. And it was all there for me. So it was just figuring out how to tell each scene, through which character's eyes we would see a particular scene. So that could be quite challenging at times, trying to make that decision who was going to be in it and which character we were going to use as our viewpoint. And then, but the one difficulty I'd had was, of course, I hadn't seen any visual material from the show. They sent me a cast photo, so I knew at least what the actors look like, which is important in Heroes because Heroes is brilliant at diversity casting.
Yeah.
It's something that I don't think it gets a lot of credit for, but it's always done that right from the start of having mixed race couples, and it makes no reference to it whatsoever.
Yeah.
It just says we live in a diverse world. There you are. And there's no need to talk about it because it just is a thing. And that's something that Heroes...
HRG does. Well, he thinks it.
He has his moments, but then he's got issues. So
yeah.
He's got plenty of it. He's got issues for everybody to go around with. Obviously, so there's that. So it was important to know what characters look like. I mean, I could figure out that, Carlos Gutierrez probably was vaguely Hispanic. The click might have been in the name. But I didn't know, for instance, Joanne was going to be played by African-American actress until I saw the photo and went, oh, okay, cool, grand, good to know. Because otherwise you're describing people and you'd be like, yeah, she's kind of a bit, not quite so white, please. You don't want to make a mistake like that. That would just be embarrassing. And then I guess it was the end of May, and I just about finished the first draft, and then I heard that they'd shown a 6-minute trailer for the opening couple of episodes at the Upfronts in New York. And I was like, please, can I see the trailer? Please. This will make my job so much easier if I know what anything looks like. Because what's described in the TV scripts, I mean, it's bare bones. It is lean. They don't over-describe anything, frankly. They just give the absolute bare bones. It's a bedroom. It's a teenage boy's bedroom. You do the math. And that's about as descriptive as a TV script gets, because that's the job of set dressers. That's the job of art directors and designers. That's what they do. So you don't bother to put it in a script, because why would you? You have 100 people to do that sort of work for you. So I didn't know what any of the stuff looked like. And it took another week or two, and then finally they were able to give me internet access so I could see this trailer. And that I had to sign another non-disclosure agreement for that. That was so pain of death. And sorry, this is the world's longest answer, but
it's all right.
I'll keep going. I will persist. So that was helpful, and that changed a lot of things. I had to do a lot of rewriting off the back of that just to go, oh, okay. And just things like, it was weird when I was watching the trailer, was the fact that Zachary Levi's character, his voice is so much deeper than it was in Chuck.
Yeah.
And because I was watching the trailer, and his voiceover sort of, you hear his voice on the trailer, on this particular trailer they cut together before you see him on the screen. And I was going, wow, who's that person with that deep voice? And then it's like, oh my God, it's Zachary Levi. Blimey, okay. He doesn't sound at all like Chuck from Chuck. And that's deliberately, and also the character's very different from Chuck. So it was a very obvious, deliberate choice by him to mix it up a bit for his career, and good on him. So it changed a lot, and then there was 2 big changes towards the end. One is there's a character in the pilot and in subsequent episodes of Heroes Reborn, of the first episode, who's a Japanese character, and we a sequence where she goes literally into a computer game. She becomes part of a computer game, and I'd sort of written this sort of lyrical, lush, evocative version of what the scene was like on the page, and they said, that's beautiful, and we're going to send you what it actually looks like because it's slightly more cut and thrust and hack and slash. I was like, oh, okay. So I rewrote that completely from top to bottom, that sequence, so it more accurately reflected what actually happened when she goes into the computer game.
If you can't answer it, you can't answer it. It's fine. But you wrote that it was like a near, like an alternate future Tokyo. Does that yes? I know if you can't answer it, but does that play into later on in the episodes, with that particular character, the description that you did when she first enters and takes a look around, if you remember that?
Oh, when she's in the game.
Right. Yeah.
I wish I could tell you. Oh,
Okay.
I'm not teasing.
I like to poke the bear. I'm sorry.
Alas, I cannot reveal all on this. The significance of that and that character and her interaction with the game is coming.
Okay, that's all I want to know. As long as it's not dropped out of nowhere.
No. There will. There's more to come. Yeah, of what the meaning and the significance of all of that will emerge. Probably, you'll start to see a bit more of it tonight in America. So that was one thing that changed right at the end, and then the other thing was the opening of the episode, which is, I guess, the opening chapters or chapter at least of the novella. Originally, that June 13 sequence that's at the start of the episode, where we see the gathering of the Evos, and then things happen. Without spoiling it too much for everybody, and that's sort of 1 year in the past. That's, I guess, 2014, June 13th, 2014, I guess is when that's it. And then we cut to June 13th, 2015. And there was hardly any of that in most of the versions of the first script. There was that a tiny little glimpse of what happened on June 13 in Odessa at the Primatech headquarters. Yeah. Primatech. So that was they somewhere along the way they made a choice was made that they needed to see more of that at the start of the show to set up a lot of the things that would follow. So that was a relatively late addition to it. I mean, they started filming Heroes Reborn, I think at the start of April from memory this year, and then that June 13th opening was, from memory, wasn't shot until July, so that was pretty close to the wire. So that was a late edition. So I had to do write a whole new opening for the novella. I guess the end of June, the start of July. I think I got the script through for that, and even that changed 2 or 3 times. I got 3 different versions of what that opening was going to look like, and some characters came and went depending upon factors about which I have no knowledge, frankly. So the version that you saw on the screen, what they've ended up with, there was several variations on that before you get. But that's the nature of the production of anything like this, is it will go through, if you pardon the pun, a series of evolutions, and then they end up with the version you see on screen.
Fair enough. So I just want to ask you, obviously being over here in the UK. Mm-hmm. Did you manage to see the premiere, and if so, what were your thoughts?
No, I still haven't seen it. The most I've seen of it is the trailers you've seen online, and that 6-minute version that they cut for the upfronts for the international advertisers and the US advertisers back in May. I watched that over and over again. I took illicit screen grabs of it so I could refer to it without having to keep watching the trailer. Because my access to the trailer only lasted 7 days, so I had to take screen grabs, and then I had to destroy my screen grabs afterwards so that they could not be leaked, and the squad would not come and get me. So I still haven't seen the episode, and of course it hasn't been screened over in the UK yet.
No,
slightly
when
galling.
does it premiere over there for you guys?
They haven't said.
Oh, brutal!
We don't even know where it's going to be shown, do we?
No, because it was on BBC Two when it was originally, wasn't it? But and nobody picked it up, and it's got really good ratings over in America. I was reading on Variety how it got huge pickup on 3-day catch up in America.
Pretty much doubled its audience on 3-day catch up, and they haven't even got the +7s yet as well.
Yeah. So it's done big numbers. So. Unless it takes a complete dive, which I would be very surprised, because there's some really strong stuff to come from the scripts I've seen. There's a cracking 2-parter coming later in the season, which I can tell you absolutely nothing about. Beyond
just that it's amazing.
It's amazing. You should watch it. But I can't tell you anything more about it. But yeah, lots of questions get answered in that 2-parter. And that's all I'm allowed to say. But yeah, so I don't know. Hopefully it will be on Netflix soon, because original Heroes Prime, whatever we want to call it, that's all up on Netflix over here. So hopefully one day soon, please, or else it'll be Blu-ray. At least I've been good. I haven't tried the bootlegger, because that's bad.
Nice.
So I guess we can move on to some viewer questions, some audience questions.
Cool.
The first one, I think I know the answer as to what you're going to say, but it's from Kobe Rodriguez on Facebook, and they've asked, "Do you know what happened to Scylla and Peter?"
Okay. Do I know what happened?
I think I know.
Honest answer is I'm not sure I do know what happened to Scylla. I don't know if he's in one of the novellas or not. I know two different versions of what happened to Peter, actually. And I can't talk about either of them. So
Yep.
no good at all.
Otherwise.
As long as you know, and there's a possibility that we could know too, I'm okay with that.
Well, I'd rather you not tell us, and not get
overexcited to discover it.
From the hit squad.
Who was the character Pennywise at Caspar Abrahams coming to pay you a visit for a penny for your thoughts.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, I love him. He's a great character.
Yes.
And he's the actor who plays him. He's great in everything he's in. And he's really it was funny again. That was the one where I watched the trailer they cut together for the upfront, and then I suddenly saw that he was quite smiling and he was sort of like tipping his hat, and I was like, oh, okay, so he's a much more playful character.
Yeah.
Whereas up to that point, it's on the page he could be played very sinister.
Yes.
And like an alternate kind of HRG, but no, he's quite a playful character.
Yeah.
So I was like, it was that was one thing. It was just, and that was he's like a little. He doesn't. All he does is just tips the hat in the trailer. But just the look on his face tells you how it's being played. It's alive.
The next up, we have quite a couple of questions from Ryan Gibson Stewart he's from the Heroes Wikipedia page. Yes, we have a lot of questions from him. You may have answered some of these, but I'm just going to go over them again. So he's talking about, were the added scenes originally in Tim Kring's script, or did you add them yourself? And a follow-up.
They were all in the scripts.
Yep. Fair enough.
I think the only thing there's all the added scenes that are in the main body of the text that are all from the scripts.
Yes.
The little bits at the start of each chapter, some of those are based on like the Mahinda voiceover. There's a couple of those. I think I transmuted. There was like a TV voiceover, and I used that as the basis for some sort of investigative reporter thing that opened the chapter. So there's a few of those are invented that I did make up, but no, all the cut scenes, the deleted scenes, all the Easter eggs, otherwise are all from Tim.
So I'm taking it. He's got a follow-up to that question, which is, did you come up with the electric power for the biker woman and the plant mimicry power for the soccer mum? If you did come up with them, how did you decide on them?
Those were in the versions of the script I had. Because I haven't actually seen the scene with the plant woman sprouting vines. I mean, it was described, and we went over it. Actually, that got I had to do rewrites on that to make it, because it wasn't clear. I got really confused. There was a bit where a character pulls out a hatchet and starts hacking away at a vine, and it wasn't clear to me where that was coming from, and there was a confusion over a character was meant to have a messenger bag, but when I watched the trailer, they didn't seem to have a messenger bag, and I didn't know where this mystery hatchet came from. So there are times where you're just trying to figure out, okay, we've got how many people in this room, and they're all sitting around, and who's sitting where, and that scene was a bit of a nightmare to write, I have to say.
Fair enough.
So no, those were
came out great though.
Her powers, the electric biker chick's powers, and then the vine sprouting plant tree Groot woman was as described in the script. I don't know if they resemble what's on screen because I ain't seen it.
He's got more questions, don't you worry. Characters like Detective Griffin, Chantel, and they share names with the actors who kind of play them.
Yes.
Is that's not a coincidence? Did you purposely seek out the actors' names, or were they just given to you?
I purposely used the actors' names, actually. Yeah, I had the cast list. And where characters didn't have names and I wanted to give them names, I figured I would use the actors' names if it seemed like a decent fit to the character look like on screen. So yeah, I figured it was a nice tip of the hat, because I mean, there's a lot of actors who don't have starring roles, and then they end up playing characters who get described on IMDb as prostitute number 3, and sort of feel, if I was that actor, I wouldn't want to be called. My list of credits at the end of my career to just go thug 2, prostitute 3, biker chick. I'd like them to have a name if possible. So I figured let's give them their own names.
Fair enough. So 2 more questions from him. So Cole Cutler, Vincent Mortimer, Errol Riviera, were they originally in the script? And that's basically all he's asked.
Okay. So Vincent Mortimer, like I say, is named after my friend from school.
Yes.
The character was just called Highway Patrolman, I think, in the script. So he was definitely in one of the versions of the script, and that whole sequence was one of the things that got cut because it was like either for timing or for production reasons. That was going to be a night shoot. It would have been quite complicated. Basically, it's a bit like that sequence in Fargo, at the start of Fargo, where somebody dies, and it's like, just think, how on earth are you going to pull? That's going to cost a fortune to shoot. So they didn't do that. So I can imagine why they didn't do that, although I don't know for certain. But anyway, so that Cole Cutler, he sounded like a really cool character on the page. He sounded amazing. He was described as being a bit like Tommy Lee Jones's character in the Fugitive film.
Okay.
I think from my memory, he was described a bit like that, and he was in that sequence at the border. He sort of walks out and sees them, and the script made reference to the fact it says, "Pay attention, we're going to meet this guy later." So this character ended up getting cut from the opening episode, but he am I allowed to say that? Okay, I'm going to say it, and then they'll send the hitmen to get me. In the versions of later scripts I've seen, the character of Cole Cutler does return.
Okay.
Whether or not that's going to come to pass, because eventually they stopped sending me new scripts after a while, once I'd handed in and it had all been signed. So, alas, I don't know what happens in the last 4 episodes. Or even in the draft. I never saw draft. I got up to episode 9, and I was like, and that's it. My supply dried up. I'm like, oh, come on, you can't leave me hanging there. So Cole Cutler, to the best of my knowledge, will return, or in the case of the TV show, will make his first appearance. Yes. He seemed like a really cool character, and he was like eating pistachio nuts and then spitting out the shells. And I was like, oh, he's just so cool. So when I first was talking to them about doing the job, and Alan had said, well, have a look at the script and then see if there's a character that stands out that you'd like to write. And I'm like, this guy, Cole Cutler. I want to write Cole. He seems like the coolest guy in town. I want to write Cole Cutler. And then when I got a later script and he'd been cut, I was like, no! So I didn't get to write an original character novella. So instead, because I was doing a novelisation, but I was determined if I possibly could to keep Cole Cutler so I could be the first person to write Cole Cutler on at least in prose. And what was the other one? Chantal.
Errol Riviera. Yeah.
Well, Errol, he's named after one of my colleagues, one of my graduates actually from the creative writing MA I work on, because he's from Texas. I can't even remember what Errol does now.
He's Noah's friendly rival at the car dealership.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. Wow, that's so not Errol at all. Okay. Yes, that was an unnamed character, and okay. I didn't even know at the time I don't think they cast the actor that were getting to play the part. So I needed a name. So I'd forgotten I'd put Errol in the book. God, I'm going to have to tell him about that.
Okay, the final question from Ryan Gibson Stewart. He asks, he talks about like the format of adding a bit of text at the beginning of each chapter and it being brilliant, and the kind of different ways you do it. He just wants to know, he's curious about the online messages from @gamergirl199x, who writes about Evernow. Is this supposed to be someone we know?
I'm trying to remember. Is it meant to be a character that will appear later on?
I believe that's what he's asking, yes.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember where I got the name from. I don't, because they sent me because they had the online prequel, which you could not watch over here. It was driving me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was region locked.
Yeah.
So they had a lot of characters in that, and the hero truther thing.
Yes.
For anybody who's seen the prequel, they now know who that is. That's a hero prime character. It now transpires, apparently. Mm-hmm. So I think I've got a feeling that might just be a name I made up.
Okay.
I think I was trying to find a name, and then I also wanted to try and find a name that wasn't somebody's Twitter account already.
Yeah.
Somebody predicted that had it.
I think I when I read the question, I went instantly to it just to see, because I don't know if you remember at the time, Heroes was really big into the kind of ARG kind of aspects.
Yeah. I signed up for Primatech myself.
Yeah, so we basically just started searching out some of the stuff that was in the prequels. Yeah, it still doesn't exist, so I'd probably get on that quickly before the episode comes out. So yeah,
was it at Gamer Girl 1990X or something?
Yeah, I'll
now's your chance, people. You too could be in a Heroes Reborn novella.
I just want to thank him for joining us.
Is there any shameless plugs that you'd like to shout out before we sign out?
I'll throw in one shameless plug, which I'm trying to wheedle. I've already wheedled into the podcast, let's be honest.
Yeah.
It's I teach part-time on the creative writing MA program at Edinburgh Napier University in Scotland, and the reason why I'm plugging it is it's a creative writing program, so it's a postgrad program, and we love genre fiction. We love science fiction, we like crime, we love horror, we love fantasy and comics and graphic novels, and we love geeks, and nearly half our students come from North America because no creative writing course in America will let them write genre, and we love it, so come to us. That's what I say. We'll treat you with respect. Cool. And you don't have to do poetry either, that's always a bonus.
Well, thank you very much. Do you have a Twitter or a website at all?
Yeah, my Twitter is I've got the world's best Twitter because it's actually my name. It's @DavidBishop.
Thank you very much for joining us. We're going to close this thing on out, so we hope you found this interview entertaining and informative. This is Lilith.
And this is Ricky.
Primatech Files signing off.